"Excuse me, but this clause is a trap," a simple black woman said, and the CEO was shocked. Maya Carter adjusted her simple black dress and stepped back into the shadows of the funeral parlor's marble columns. She had learned long ago that invisible was safer. Invisible meant you could listen. Invisible meant you could learn. And after 6 years as Edwin Lancaster's personal assistant, Maya had learned more than anyone in this room could imagine. The funeral service had been everything Edwin would have hated: ostentatious, cold, and filled with people who cared more about his money than his memory. Maya watched from her position near the back as Gregory Lancaster, Edwin's son and newly appointed CEO of Lancaster Group. "Father would be so proud to see how the company has grown under my leadership these past few months," Gregory announced to a cluster of board members, his voice carrying across the hushed parlor. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his designer suit impeccable, and his smile practiced. "Lancaster Group is entering a new era of unprecedented expansion." Maya's jaw tightened. Gregory had been leading for exactly 3 months, ever since Edwin's first heart attack had forced him to step back. In those 3 months, Gregory had cut employee benefits, laid off 60 people from the manufacturing division, and cancelled the community scholarship program Edwin had personally funded for 15 years. "Maya dear, could you get me some water?" Mrs. Eleanor Lancaster, Edwin's widow, approached with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. She was a thin, elegant woman who wore her grief like an expensive accessory, beautiful, but ultimately for show. "Of course, Mrs. Lancaster." Maya nodded and moved toward the refreshment table, knowing she was being dismissed more than asked. It was always the same. Get the coffee. Take the notes. Stand in the corner. Be invisible. But Maya didn't mind being invisible today. It gave her time to remember. "Maya, come here for a moment." Edwin's voice echoed in her memory as she poured water into a crystal glass. It had been just 2 weeks ago, in his study overlooking the Lancaster estate gardens. Edwin had been weaker then, his once powerful frame diminished by illness, but his mind remained sharp as ever. "I need you to take some notes for me. Very important notes." She had pulled out her usual notepad, but Edwin had shaken his head and produced a leather-bound journal instead. "Use this one. And Maya, lock it in your personal safe when we're done. Not the office safe. Your personal one." For 3 hours that afternoon, Edwin had dictated to her. Not business correspondence or meeting schedules, but something far more significant. His voice had been steady, deliberate, as if he were carving each word into stone. "There are things about this family, about my legacy, that need to be set right before I'm gone. People have been overlooked. Debts have gone unpaid. Not financial debts, Maya. Deeper ones." When they had finished, Edwin had asked her to notarize the document. Then he had done something that had surprised her even after 6 years of surprises. He had taken her hands in his weathered ones and looked directly into her eyes. "You've been more loyal to me than my own blood, Maya. More faithful than my own wife. Do you know why that matters to me?" She had shaken her head, unable to speak. "Because loyalty like yours is rare. And it should be rewarded. One day, they'll know who you really are." "Maya!" Gregory's sharp voice cut through her memories. "Where's that water for my stepmother?" "Coming right away, Mr. Lancaster." Maya hurried over with the glass, noting how Gregory's eyes barely acknowledged her existence. To him, she was part of the furniture, useful, but ultimately replaceable. "I was just telling the board members about our expansion into Southeast Asian markets," Gregory continued, turning back to his audience. "Father always said the future of Lancaster Group depended on bold leadership and decisive action. I plan to honor that vision." Maya bit her tongue. Edwin had said no such thing. In fact, just last month he had specifically told her that rushing into international markets without proper cultural research and local partnerships was the kind of arrogant mistake that finishes companies and communities alike. "The will reading is tomorrow at 10, Gregory announced to the room. "I know Father would want his final wishes to be handled with the dignity and respect befitting the Lancaster name." As his successor, I'll make sure his legacy is preserved exactly as he intended. Several people nodded approvingly. Maya noticed how Gregory's chest puffed with pride, how he stood a little taller when people looked at him with respect and deference. He was a man who had waited his entire life to step out of his father's shadow, and now that the moment had arrived, he was savoring every second of it. Will you be attending the reading, Maya? Eleanor Lancaster asked, her tone suggesting the question was merely a formality. Before Maya could answer, Gregory waved dismissively. Oh, I'm sure Maya has better things to do than sit through legal proceedings. Besides, it's really a family matter. Actually, Maya said quietly, Mr. Lancaster specifically requested that I be present. He said there might be details about his personal affairs that only I would understand. Gregory's expression flickered with annoyance. Father said a lot of things in his final weeks. Pain medication can make people confused about what's important. Maya felt a flash of anger but kept her voice steady. He was very clear about wanting me there, Mr. Lancaster. I have it in writing. This was true. Edwin had written her a formal note requesting her presence at the will reading, though he had never explained why. At the time, Maya had assumed it was because she might need to clarify some of his business arrangements or personal requests. Now, remembering that afternoon in his study and the strange weight in his voice when he spoke about debts and overlooked people, she wondered if there was more to it. Fine, Gregory said with the air of someone granting a small favor to a child. I suppose Father always did rely on you for the small details. Just try to stay out of the way during the important parts. Maya nodded, but inside, something was stirring. Edwin Lancaster had never asked her to do anything without a reason. He had been a chess player in business and in life, always thinking several moves ahead. If he wanted her at that will reading, it wasn't to take notes or fetch coffee. As the funeral guests began to disperse, Maya gathered her purse and coat. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, she would be in the Lancaster family library, surrounded by people who saw her as nothing more than hired help. They would expect her to sit quietly in her corner, invisible and insignificant. But Edwin's words echoed in her mind. One day, they'll know who you really are. Maya had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but she had spent 6 years learning that Edwin Lancaster never spoke in riddles without purpose. Whatever was in that will, whatever role he expected her to play, she would be ready. After all, she had been taking very careful notes. The Lancaster family library felt like a courtroom the next morning. Rich mahogany shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound books that looked more decorative than read. A massive oak table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by high-backed chairs that seemed designed to make their occupants feel important. Maya sat in a smaller chair near the window, positioned exactly where she expected to be, close enough to hear everything, far enough away to remain invisible. She clutched her notepad, though she doubted anyone would ask her to record anything today. Gregory Lancaster sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. His wife, Patricia, sat to his right, checking her phone with barely concealed boredom. Eleanor Lancaster perched across from them, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief that Maya noticed was completely dry. Various cousins, business partners, and Lancaster Group executives filled the remaining seats. "Thank you all for being here," said Mr. Harrison Whitfield, the family's longtime attorney. He was a distinguished man in his 70s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses that gave him an air of scholarly authority. Edwin's final wishes were quite specific about who should be present for this reading. Gregory leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. "I'm sure Father kept things simple and straightforward. He always believed in clear, decisive action." Maya remembered Edwin saying something very different just last month. "The most important decisions are often the most complicated ones, Maya. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either a fool or a liar." Mr. Whitfield opened a thick manila folder and withdrew several documents. "Edwin's will is comprehensive. He wanted to ensure that every aspect of his legacy was addressed with proper care." He began reading in the formal, measured tone that lawyers perfected. The first sections were exactly what everyone expected: charitable donations, personal items distributed to family members, and various financial arrangements. Gregory's smile grew wider with each paragraph that confirmed his control over the family empire. And now we come to the matter of Lancaster Group shares and corporate leadership, Mr. Whitfield continued. To my son, Gregory Edwin Lancaster, I leave. Gregory straightened in his chair, ready to receive his coronation. The responsibility of interim management, pending the resolution of certain conditions outlined in Addendum C, which addresses the transfer of majority shares to. Maya felt something cold twist in her stomach. She looked up from her notepad, studying Mr. Whitfield's face. Something was wrong. He was frowning at the document, his confident tone faltering. I'm sorry, the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. This clause seems to contain contradictory language. It states that majority shares transfer to Gregory, but then immediately references conditions that would void this transfer if. Excuse me, Maya said quietly. Every head in the room turned toward her. The sudden attention made her heart race, but she forced herself to continue. Excuse me, but this clause is a trap. The silence that followed was deafening. Gregory's face went from confusion to anger in seconds. I beg your pardon? He said, his voice dangerously low. Maya stood up, her legs trembling but her voice steady. That clause, the one about interim management and conditions. It's designed to look like it gives you control, but the legal language actually voids the transfer. Your father explained it to me. Mr. Whitfield's eyebrows shot up. Miss Carter, I appreciate your attention to detail, but this is a legal matter that requires. Section 4.2.b. Maya interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. Cross-reference it with the conditions in Addendum C. The interim management clause contains language that legally contradicts the share transfer, making the entire provision null and void under California corporate law. The lawyer quickly flipped through the pages, his frown deepening. Ah, yes, I see what you mean. This is quite unusual. The language does appear to create a legal contradiction that would indeed void the transfer. Gregory slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. You're going to let the help interpret my father's will? Mr. Lancaster, Maya said, reaching into her purse. There's something else you need to see. She withdrew a sealed envelope and handed it to Mr. Whitfield. This is an addendum that was never submitted to your office. Mr. Edwin gave it to me 2 weeks before he died, with specific instructions to present it if there were any complications with the original will. Eleanor Lancaster gasped. That's impossible. Edwin would have told me about any changes. Maya met her eyes directly. With respect, Mrs. Lancaster, he told me there were many things he never shared with the family. He said some truths were too important to trust to people who might try to change them. Mr. Whitfield carefully opened the envelope, his hands shaking slightly. As he read the contents, his face went pale. This is quite remarkable, he whispered. What does it say? Gregory demanded. The lawyer cleared his throat, struggling to maintain his professional composure. This addendum, if authentic, completely changes the inheritance structure. It states that Edwin's majority shares in Lancaster Group are to be transferred to a child born outside marriage in 1991. The room erupted. Gregory shot to his feet, his face red with rage. That's impossible. Father never had any illegitimate children. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Mr. Whitfield, could you please read the names specified in that addendum? The lawyer's voice was barely a whisper. Maya Elizabeth Carter. The silence that followed was complete. Maya could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corner, could hear Patricia Lancaster's sharp intake of breath, could hear her own heart thundering in her chest. This is fraud, Gregory shouted. Pure fraud. That woman has forged documents. But Maya was already reaching into her purse again, withdrawing a small manila envelope. Mr. Edwin had a DNA test done 3 months ago, she said, her voice surprisingly calm. The results are right here. The manila envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in Maya's trembling hands. She had carried this secret for weeks, not fully understanding what it meant until this very moment. Edwin had given her the DNA results with the same careful instructions as everything else. "Keep this safe, Maya. You'll know when it's time." Mr. Whitfield extended his hand, his professional composure cracking at the edges. "Miss Carter, may I examine those documents?" "Absolutely not." Gregory's voice boomed across the library. He strode around the table toward Maya, his face flushed with rage. "This is an elaborate con game. You think you can waltz in here with forged papers and steal my inheritance?" "Gregory, please," Eleanor said, though her voice lacked conviction. Her face had gone ashen, and she kept glancing between Maya and the portrait of Edwin that hung above the fireplace. Maya handed the envelope to Mr. Whitfield, ignoring Gregory's proximity. "The test was conducted at Gene Tech Laboratories. Dr. Sarah Martinez supervised the analysis personally. Mr. Edwin insisted on using the most reputable facility available." The lawyer's hands shook as he withdrew the documents. The room fell silent except for the rustle of papers and Gregory's heavy breathing. Maya watched Mr. Whitfield's face transform as he read, his eyebrows rising higher with each line. "This appears to be legitimate," he said slowly. "The letterhead is authentic, the signatures are notarized, and the chain of custody documentation is complete. According to these results, Edwin Lancaster is indeed Maya Carter's biological father with a 99.7% probability." Patricia Lancaster finally looked up from her phone, her perfectly made-up face slack with shock. "That's impossible. She's black?" Maya finished quietly. "Yes, I am. Just like my mother was." Eleanor's handkerchief dropped to the floor. "Your mother? Who was your mother?" Maya had rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times, but now that it was here, the words felt strange on her tongue. "Sarah Carter. She worked as a secretary at Lancaster Group from 1989 to 1992. She died when I was 15. The color drained from Eleanor's face completely. "Sarah Carter," she whispered. "I remember her. She left suddenly. Edwin said she'd found another job. She was fired," Maya said, her voice steady despite the emotion building in her chest. "When she told Mr. Edwin she was pregnant, he panicked. He was married, running for a position on the city council, and couldn't afford a scandal. So he gave her money to disappear and made sure she could never work in the industry again." Gregory was pacing now, his hands clenched into fists. "Even if this is true, and I'm not saying it is, it doesn't matter. You can't just show up 30 years later and claim an inheritance." Mr. Whitfield was studying the addendum again, cross-referencing it with the original will. "Actually, Mr. Lancaster, if these documents are authentic, the legal claim is quite solid. The addendum is properly notarized, witnessed, and explicitly revokes the previous inheritance structure. It also contains specific language indicating that Edwin was aware of Miss Carter's identity when he drafted it." Maya reached into her purse one more time and withdrew a small digital recorder. "Mr. Edwin recorded this 3 weeks before he died. He said I might need proof of his intentions." She pressed play. Edwin's familiar voice filled the room, weaker than she remembered but unmistakably his. "My name is Edwin James Lancaster, and I am recording this on October 15, 2024, in sound mind and body. For 33 years I have carried the weight of abandoning my daughter, Maya Elizabeth Carter, and her mother, Sarah. I was a coward then, choosing my reputation over my responsibility. I cannot undo that choice, but I can ensure that Maya receives what should have been hers from the beginning. She is my blood, my child, and she has proven herself worthy of the Lancaster name through her loyalty, intelligence, and integrity. The addendum to my will ensures that she will inherit controlling interest in Lancaster Group, not as charity, but as her birthright." The recording continued for several more minutes, with Edwin detailing his reasons and his hopes for Maya's future leadership of the company. When it finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Mr. Whitfield removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. "This is unprecedented in my 40 years of practice. Miss Carter, I need to verify these documents independently, but if they're authentic, and I believe they are, You are the rightful heir to controlling interest in Lancaster Group. Gregory's face had gone from red to purple. This is insane. She's been planning this for years. She wormed her way into father's life, manipulated a sick old man, and now she's trying to steal everything. I never asked for this, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. I loved working for your father. I respected him. I never knew until 3 months ago. Liar! Gregory shouted. Get out! Get out of this house right now! Mr. Whitfield stood up, gathering the documents. Mr. Lancaster, I need to pause this reading to verify the authenticity of these documents and research the legal implications. Miss Carter, I'll need you to meet with me tomorrow to discuss the next steps. She's not going anywhere near this family again. Gregory moved toward Maya threateningly. Eleanor finally found her voice. Gregory, stop. Just stop. She looked at Maya with a mixture of shock and something that might have been recognition. You have his eyes. Edwin's eyes. I should have seen it before. Maya felt tears threatening for the first time since entering the room. Mrs. Lancaster, I never meant for any of this to hurt anyone. I just want to honor his wishes. His wishes? Gregory's laugh was bitter and sharp. You destroyed this family today. I hope you're proud of yourself. As chaos erupted around her, Maya stood quietly in the center of the storm, holding the truth that would change everything. Maya should have expected the lockout, but it still stung when she arrived at the Lancaster estate the next morning to find the security gates closed and 2 guards posted at the entrance. She rolled down her car window as the larger guard approached. I'm sorry, Miss Carter, but we have orders not to allow you on the property, he said, avoiding her eyes. Maya recognized him, Tom Rodriguez, a man she chatted with countless times during her 6 years coming and going from the estate. Orders from whom, Tom? Mr. Gregory Lancaster. He said you're no longer employed by the family and have no business here. Maya nodded calmly, though her stomach churned. I understand. Could you please tell him I'll need to collect my personal items from Mr. Edwin's study? There are some things that belong to me. Tom shifted uncomfortably. He said to tell you that anything left behind becomes property of the estate. I'm real sorry, Miss Carter. You always treated us good. Driving away from the estate that had been like a second home, Maya felt the first wave of true isolation wash over her. It was one thing to know intellectually that the family would retaliate. It was another to experience the cold reality of being cut off from everything familiar. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Drop your fake claims or face the consequences. This family doesn't forget. Then another. Gold digger. Your 15 minutes are up. By the time she reached her apartment, there were 17 messages, each more threatening than the last. Maya turned off her phone and sat in her small living room, surrounded by the quiet life she'd built for herself. It felt fragile now, like something that could be swept away with a single phone call. The knock on her door came at 8 p.m. Maya peered through the peephole to see a woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes, holding a briefcase. Miss Carter? My name is Diana Morrison. I used to work for Edwin Lancaster. May I come in? Maya opened the door cautiously. I'm sorry, I don't remember you. I left Lancaster Group about 8 years ago, Diana said, settling into Maya's small kitchen chair. I was Edwin's chief legal counsel before Harrison Whitfield took over the family's personal affairs. Edwin called me 2 months before he died. Maya's heart raced. What did he say? Diana opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. He said he was about to right an old wrong, and he might need someone who understood the real Edwin Lancaster, not the public version. He hired me to represent you, Maya. This retainer was paid months ago. Relief flooded through Maya's chest. Even in death, Edwin was still looking out for her. The first thing you need to know, Diana continued, is that Gregory's lockout tactics are illegal. As the rightful heir, you have every right to access company property and records. We can get a court order by tomorrow. What about the threats? Diana's expression hardened. Harassment and intimidation. We'll document everything and file for a restraining order if necessary. Gregory is scared, Maya. Scared people make stupid mistakes. Over the next hour, Diana spread documents across Maya's kitchen table. Edwin was meticulous in his planning. Look at this. Job offers from 3 different companies over the past 2 years. All with significantly higher salaries than what you were making. Maya stared at the letters. I never saw these. Because Edwin intercepted them. He documented every offer you unknowingly turned down by staying loyal to him. He kept copies of performance reviews showing your contributions to major deals. He even recorded video messages. Diana pulled out a tablet and pressed play. Edwin's face appeared on screen, sitting in his study during what must have been his final weeks. Maya, if you're watching this, it means the family is fighting the will. I expected this. What they don't understand is that I've been preparing you for leadership for years, even if you didn't know it. Every meeting I brought you to, every document I asked you to review, every decision I explained to you, it was all training. You know this company better than Gregory ever will. The video continued with Edwin detailing specific business strategies, client relationships, and growth opportunities that he'd discussed with Maya over the years. It was like watching a master class in corporate leadership, taught by a man who had built an empire from nothing. There's more, Diana said, scrolling through files on her laptop. Financial records showing that under Gregory's interim leadership, the company has already lost 3 major clients. Employee satisfaction surveys showing morale at an all-time low. And this? She pointed to a news article on her screen. Gregory gave an interview to Business Weekly yesterday. Maya read the headline aloud. New Lancaster CEO exposes family fraud, secretary's elaborate con game revealed. The article painted Maya as a manipulative opportunist who had spent years planning to deceive a lonely, sick old man. Gregory's quotes were particularly harsh. My father was vulnerable in his final months. This woman took advantage of his kindness and confused state of mind. We will fight this fraud with every legal tool at our disposal. He's trying to destroy your reputation before you can establish yourself. Diana explained. Classic corporate warfare. But Edwin anticipated this too. She handed Maya another folder. Character references from every major client Edwin worked with over the past 6 years. All of them mention your professionalism, intelligence, and integrity. Several specifically note how you often provided insights that improved their deals. Maya felt overwhelmed by the weight of Edwin's preparation. He really thought of everything, didn't he? Edwin Lancaster didn't become successful by leaving things to chance. Diana smiled. He saw something in you, Maya. Something worth fighting for. The question is, are you ready to fight back? Looking at the evidence of Edwin's faith in her abilities, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. For 6 years, she had been content to remain in the shadows, to be the quiet assistant who made everyone else look good. But Edwin hadn't just left her a company, he had left her a challenge. Yes, she said quietly. I'm ready. 3 weeks later, Maya stood outside the glass doors of the Lancaster Group boardroom, her heart pounding but her hands steady. The court had ruled in her favor after Diana presented overwhelming evidence of the will's authenticity. Gregory had been forced to step down pending a fraud investigation for deliberately concealing the addendum, and the board had reluctantly agreed to meet with their new majority shareholder. Diana squeezed her shoulder. Remember, half of them already doubt you before you even speak. The other half are waiting to see if you'll crumble under pressure. Show them Edwin's daughter. Maya nodded and pushed open the doors. The Lancaster Group boardroom was designed to intimidate. 30 feet of polished mahogany tables surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city skyline, while portraits of company founders stared down from the walls like disapproving ancestors. 12 faces turned toward Maya as she entered. She recognized most of them from company events where she'd served coffee and taken notes. Board members who had smiled politely at her for years now watched her with expressions ranging from skeptical curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Gentlemen, Maya said, taking her place at the head of the table where Edwin used to sit. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "Thank you for meeting with me today." Robert Hartwell, the company's longest-serving board member, cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, we're all still adjusting to this unexpected development. I hope you understand our position is quite difficult." "I understand completely, Mr. Hartwell. Change is never easy, especially when it comes suddenly." "Suddenly?" James Morrison, the head of operations, leaned forward. "Miss Carter, with respect, you've been Edwin's assistant for years. If you truly are his daughter, why are we only learning this now?" Maya had expected this question. "Because I only learned it 3 months ago myself, Mr. Morrison. Edwin chose to reveal the truth when he was ready to make amends for past mistakes. I was as surprised as anyone. But surely you must have suspected something," pressed Dr. Catherine Wells, the only woman on the board besides Maya. "There must have been signs. The only sign I had was that Edwin treated me with respect and trusted me with important responsibilities. I assumed that was because I worked hard and proved myself reliable. I never imagined it was because we shared blood." A murmur ran around the table. Maya noticed several board members exchanging glances, some skeptical, others thoughtful. "Miss Carter," Robert Hartwell said carefully, "we've all heard about your dedication to Edwin over the years. But running a billion-dollar corporation requires more than loyalty. It requires vision, strategic thinking, and the ability to make difficult decisions that affect thousands of employees and their families." Maya reached into her briefcase and withdrew a thick presentation folder. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Hartwell. Which is why I've prepared a comprehensive business plan based on conversations I had with Edwin over the past 2 years." She stood and moved to the presentation screen, clicking to her first slide. The room fell silent as Edwin's handwriting appeared. Notes from their private meetings, strategies they'd discussed, insights he'd shared about market trends and company direction. "Edwin spent the last 2 years of his life preparing me for this moment, even though I didn't realize it at the time. Every major decision, every client meeting, every strategic discussion, he made sure I understood not just what we were doing, but why we were doing it." Maya clicked to the next slide, showing declining employee satisfaction scores under Gregory's leadership. "Our workforce is demoralized. We've lost 3 major clients in the past month, and our reputation in the industry is suffering. Edwin always said that a company's greatest asset isn't its buildings or its equipment, it's the people who believe in its mission." She outlined her plan systematically, reinstating the employee benefits Gregory had cut, reviving the community scholarship program, investing in worker training and development, and rebuilding the ethical standards that had made Lancaster Group a respected name in business. "Edwin didn't just build a company," Maya continued, her confidence growing with each slide. "He built a legacy of integrity and community responsibility. Under Gregory's leadership, we've abandoned those principles for short-term profits. I propose we return to them." Dr. Wells raised her hand. "These are admirable goals, Miss Carter, but how do you plan to fund these initiatives while maintaining profitability?" Maya smiled. This was the question she'd hoped someone would ask. "By implementing the expansion strategy Edwin and I developed last year. Strategic partnerships in renewable energy, targeted investment in emerging technologies, and a gradual shift towards sustainable business practices that will position us as industry leaders." She spent the next 20 minutes detailing specific plans, citing market research Edwin had commissioned, and explaining financial projections that showed sustainable growth over the next 5 years. By the time she finished, the room's atmosphere had shifted palpably. "This is quite impressive," admitted James Morrison. "These aren't the ideas of someone who's been planning a takeover. These are Edwin's strategies." "With respect, Mr. Morrison," Maya replied, "these are our strategies. Edwin taught me to think like a leader, not just follow instructions. Every idea in this presentation came from our discussions about what Lancaster Group could become." Robert Hartwell was studying the financial projections. "The board will need time to review these proposals, but I have to say, Miss Carter, this is far more comprehensive than anything we've seen from previous leadership." As the meeting concluded, several board members approached Maya individually. Dr. Wells shook her hand warmly. "I look forward to working with you, Miss Carter. It's been a long time since someone brought genuine passion to this room." Walking out of the building with Diana, Maya felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "How do you think it went?" she asked. Diana grinned. "I think Edwin would be very proud of his daughter." 6 months later, Maya stood in the same Lancaster Group boardroom where she had once fought for recognition, but everything had changed. The quarterly reports spread across the mahogany table told a story of remarkable transformation: employee satisfaction up 40%, 3 new major clients signed, and the company's stock price at a 5-year high. The renewable energy partnership alone has generated $12 million in new revenue, Dr. Wells reported, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. And the community scholarship program has generated more positive press than we've seen in years. Maya smiled, remembering how nervous she'd been in this same room just months ago. Now, she felt the quiet confidence that came from proving herself through results rather than words. "The board has made its decision," Robert Hartwell announced formally. "Maya Carter, we'd like to offer you the permanent position of Chief Executive Officer of Lancaster Group." The applause that followed was genuine and warm, a far cry from the skeptical silence that had greeted her first presentation. Maya accepted graciously, though part of her had known this moment was inevitable. Edwin had prepared her too well for any other outcome. After the meeting, Maya walked to her office, Edwin's former office, which she had finally agreed to occupy. The space still felt like his, filled with the books he'd loved and the photographs that chronicled his decades building the company. But there were new additions now. The Community Awards Lancaster Group had won under her leadership, thank you letters from scholarship recipients, and a small framed photo of her mother that Maya had finally felt brave enough to display. Her assistant knocked and entered. "Ms. Carter, there's a gentleman here to see you. He says he's Gregory Lancaster." Maya's stomach tightened, but she nodded. "Send him in." Gregory looked older than she remembered, his once perfect appearance now showing the strain of legal troubles and public disgrace. The fraud investigation had resulted in criminal charges, and his reputation in the business world was effectively destroyed. "Maya," he said quietly, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Gregory, please sit down." Maya gestured to the chairs in front of her desk, choosing not to sit behind it. Even now, she preferred to meet challenges directly rather than hide behind symbols of power. "I wanted to apologize," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "For the things I said, the way I treated you. For trying to destroy your reputation." Maya studied his face, looking for sincerity. She found it, mixed with exhaustion, and something that might have been genuine regret. "I spent my whole life competing with a father who never seemed to notice me," Gregory continued. "When I found out he had another child, someone he'd chosen to trust and prepare for leadership, it felt like the final rejection. I lashed out at you when I should have been examining my own failures." "Edwin loved you, Gregory," Maya said gently. "He talked about you often. He worried that he'd been too hard on you, that he'd never properly shown you how proud he was." Gregory's eyes filled with tears. "He left me the house, you know, and a trust fund that will keep me comfortable for life. Even after everything, he took care of me. But he left you the company because he knew you'd protect it. Protect what it really means." They sat in silence for a moment, two people connected by a complicated legacy of love and disappointment. "I won't ask for forgiveness," Gregory said finally. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. Father didn't choose you to hurt me. He chose you because you were the right choice." After Gregory left, Maya sat alone in the gathering twilight, thinking about families and forgiveness and the strange ways that love can manifest across decades of mistakes and misunderstandings. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor Lancaster. "Saw the quarterly reports in the news. Edwin would be so proud. Would you like to have dinner this week? I have some stories about your mother I'd like to share." Maya smiled and typed back her acceptance. Family, she was learning, came in many forms. Later that evening, Maya attended the annual Lancaster Group Charity Gala, the first one she would attend as CEO rather than as an invisible assistant in the background. The ballroom was filled with the city's most prominent citizens, all eager to meet the woman who had transformed one of their most established companies. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced, "please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Lancaster Group, Maya Carter." As Maya took the stage, she looked out at the audience and spotted familiar faces, board members who had become trusted advisors, employees whose lives had improved under her leadership, scholarship recipients whose futures were brighter because of Edwin's vision. But her eyes were drawn to the portrait that hung above the ballroom's entrance, Edwin Lancaster in his prime, looking every inch the successful businessman he had been. As their eyes seemed to meet across time and space, Maya felt his presence like a blessing. "Edwin Lancaster once told me that a true legacy isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed ballroom. "It's measured in the lives we touch and the positive changes we leave behind. Tonight I stand before you not just as the CEO of Lancaster Group, but as Edwin Lancaster's daughter, not by chance, but by choice. His choice to believe in second chances. His choice to trust in redemption. His choice to prove that love can transcend any mistake, any distance, any amount of time." She paused, feeling the weight of Edwin's legacy and the lightness of her own future. "He didn't just leave me a company," Maya concluded, her voice strong and sure. "He gave me my name." The applause was thunderous, but Maya barely heard it. In that moment, she was simply a daughter who had finally come home.